Hey, this is Jody with WeldingTipsAndTricks.com, wishing you and your family a very Merry Christmas. This is part 2 of welding an aluminum fixture using a Hobart Ironman 230 with spool gun. Here's a little quick review of part 1 where we scribed a circle using a center index point on the precision welding table. We use a spacer hub here. The center hub to this aluminum welding fixture is dang near 2 inches thick, so it's going to need some preheat to weld better. Square parts are pretty simple for fabricating. Round parts throw you a little curve, but with this whole pattern on the precision welding table, it's very easy to get this thing lined up, get the hub clocked like it needs to be, get it all clamped down, ready for fit up and tack. And then we're going to talk about preheat today. Because in part 1 I mentioned preheat, but I didn't really go into it at all. So I'm trying to show you a little bit and some tips on preheating and where to not screw up. Just for tack welding, it's pretty easy to get tack welds on the corners with no problem. But look, this is an almost 2-inch thick hub. We've got a 3/4 inch thick spoke, a 1/2 inch thick ring here, and the hub is almost 2 inches thick. And so that's a lot of heat sink there on aluminum. It just draws heat out so quickly. I was going to use a 50-50 helium mix, but I was having some soot problems and I was trying to figure out where my leak was in all my connections, and so I didn't want to deal with too many things at one time. So I decided just to use straight argon and preheat. And I use this IR infrared heat gun so I can tell where I'm at on the preheat. I'm using a rosebud to preheat with with acetylene and oxygen. And you need to crank it up dang near to 15. You don't want to go over 15 psi with acetylene, but you need almost 15 so that you have enough flow on the tip. That's where people mess up with rosebud tips. One place they mess up, not having enough flow. You got to crank enough flow through that thing to keep the tip cool so that it won't pop back and flash back. So I light it with a lot of acetylene. I crank it up till the soot's gone, and even then some from there, and then add oxygen and just get a lot of flow going through it. And that'll keep the tip cool, keep it from popping back, as long as I have the tip matched with the tank size. Now the heat gun here is very important. You can use a temple stick, temperature crayon, it's probably a little bit more accurate, but this heat gun here lets me know where I'm at so I don't go crazy and heat it up too much, which on something this thick was probably not a risk at all, because I heated and heated and heated for like 10 minutes, and before I knew it, it would cool down to under 200. So I've sped this up a little bit so you don't have to endure it. But even before I weld that hub, I threw a little bit more heat on it because it dropped all the way down to about 150. So here's the gun angle. You need to use a push angle with a spool gun, and you also need to use a longer stick out than you would use with steel. Those are probably two main tips: a push angle and a longer stick out. And those will get you a long way. I'm using a little hitch forward and pull back type to build up type of a technique, so that I'll put kind of some ripples in the weld, but I'm sure there are plenty of other techniques that work. Here's a steel pull angle bead just to show you the technique there, but you need to use a push angle with aluminum whenever possible. Use a pull, it's going to soot up, probably not the end of the world. You'll have to brush the soot off, but it looks a whole lot better if you push. All right, look at this guy. What's he doing? Is he pimping these welding tips and tricks t-shirts? What's going on? He's wearing a hog helmet. Well, his t-shirt has a hog on it with holding a MIG and a TIG, and now he's holding a MIG and a TIG gun.